Mrs. Cooling, and today I'm going to be reading part 4 of Bob and the House Elves by Emily Roeder and Tim Archibald. Chapter 9. No, said Lily quickly, patting Bob's arm. I'm sure the recipe used to work a long time ago, Bob, but elves have got used to it. That's the trouble. These days, it doesn't scare them at all. Is that right? Said Bob, staring. Lily nodded. Actually, mine quite like the mixture on toast, she said, and they've learned the words of the curse off by heart. They've made them into a song. They often sing it to put their babies to sleep at night. It sounds quite sweet, really. Bob the Builder was a brave man, but he knew when he was beaten. Then I've had it, Lil, he said. I've shot my bolt. I've come to the end of the line. I'm up the creek without a paddle. In half an hour, my mates are coming round for cards, and they'll see those elves, and I'll never live it down. Oh, well, he straightened his shoulders. That's life. Lily looked confused. But if your friends are the problem, why don't you just ask your elves to keep out of the way for a while, she said. Ask them? Bob was astounded. All over again. Crikey! I've asked them to get out 1,000,000 times, mate. I've shouted and yelled till I'm blue in the face. But shouting won't do any good, exclaimed Lily. Elves never listen when you shout. It just makes them overexcited and troublesome. You have to speak softly and politely to them. Or better still, write them a note. They love notes. I'm not much of one for writing notes, Bob mumbled, going red all over again. I'll help you then, Lily said. Chapter 10. So Lily and Bob went into his house, and she helped him write the note. The note said, Dear Elves, would you be so kind as to leave this house from 10 minutes to 7 this evening until 2 a.m. I'm expecting guests. Thank you very much. With best wishes, yours sincerely, Bob the Builder. They put the note on the fridge where all the elves could see it, and 5 minutes later there wasn't an elf in sight. It's like magic, said Bob. It's just polite, said Lily. Well, I'd better be going. Your friends will be coming round any minute. Bob took her to the door. Tomorrow, could you help me write a note to tell them to go away for good? He asked hopefully. The elves, I mean. Lily looked doubtful. I could, I suppose. But are you sure you really want that, Bob? I know they're a bit of a nuisance sometimes, but I quite like having them around the place myself. They do all the housework for a start. They mend my clothes, and I find the fairy bread gives me bright ideas. Bob frowned in thought. Crikey, you might have a point there, Lil, he said at last. I've had a few bright ideas lately, and I'd be just as happy never to pick up a broom again, I can tell you that. Housework's a pain in the neck. I agree, said Lily. So, what do you want to do? But Bob didn't quite know. He had another problem. He wanted the elves to go, but he wanted them to stay as well. Chapter 11. Bob's mates all arrived after that, so Bob and Lily couldn't talk any more. But after his mates went home, Bob thought about his problem quite a lot. He thought about it so much he couldn't sleep. At 2 a.m. the elves came back. They cleaned up all the empty glasses and the pizza boxes. They swept the floor and washed up and put a plate of fairy bread on the table. Bob made himself a cup of tea, sat down at the table and ate some fairy bread to settle his nerves. Then he had a bright idea. Without even waiting for Lily Sweet, he got paper and a pen and wrote the elves a note. Dear elves, thank you for all your work and the fairy bread. I really appreciate it. But if you want to stay in my house, please note the following rules. Please don't clean my working boots. Please don't polish my hard hat. Please don't tie my hair in knots at night. And please don't make the house too tidy. It makes me nervous. Please note I like Vegemite sandwiches for lunch, or tuna sandwiches, or cheese, or peanut butter, not fairy bread or cakes. Please leave the house between 7 and 2 on Saturday nights because I always have guests then. Thank you very much. With best wishes, yours sincerely, Bob the Builder. Bob put the note on the fridge and went to bed. After that, there was no more trouble. Now that Bob wasn't shouting at them, the elves became quiet and very easy to live with. Sometimes they were so quiet that Bob didn't even know they were there, except that the house was always clean and tidy, but not too tidy, and none of his clothes had holes in them anymore. The elves obeyed all the rules Bob had written for them that night, so his mates had no more reason to laugh at him. And Saturday card nights were always a great success. Bob's mates quite liked the house being a bit tidier. It was easier to find somewhere to sit, they said. And of course, Bob and Lily Sweet saw a lot of one another. After all, they had plenty in common, elves and baked beans, and not liking housework for a start. They always had lunch together on Sundays, and sometimes they'd have it in Bob's house and sometimes in Lily's. Then they'd go for a walk in the park while the elves cleaned up. Bob wasn't much of one for talking about his feelings, but after lunch one Sunday he knew the time had come. He'd worked out just what he was going to say. He ate a last piece of fairy bread to settle his nerves. Then he took Lily's hand across the table. "Lil," he said in a low, low voice, "you're a special lady. No elf could take your place." Lily went red. "No elf could take your place either, Bob," she whispered. "Who cares about money anyway?" Bob felt very, very happy. "How about we get hitched then?" he said. And Lily said that was the brightest idea he'd ever had. So they got married, and Bob made their 2 houses into one big house for them to share. The elves were very pleased. The renovations made a lot of mess, so they had plenty of work to do. And besides, being elves, there was nothing they liked better than a story with a happy ending.